The guard on the southern tower of Herod's palace shifted his spear and watched the western road. His name does not survive. His face does not survive. But that morning, before the city woke, he saw them coming. A torch-lit procession winding up from the lower city, priests in white, temple guards in leather, and bound in the middle of them, walking under his own weight, a man whose face he could not yet make out. The guard had seen 1,000 processions. Dawn arrests were Roman business. He shifted his spear. He called down to the gate. He had no idea he had just become the first witness to the most consequential trial in human history. For 2,000 years, Christians have walked the wrong path to find this place. The pavement where Jesus was sentenced is not where tradition tells you it is. The stones where a Roman governor washed his hands lie on the opposite side of the city from where you have been told. And what happened on those stones involved a board game soldiers played with sheep-bone dice, a dream a Roman wife could not unsee, and 3 Latin words that ended everything. What you are about to see is the trial of Jesus reconstructed from the actual archaeology, the actual law, and the political terror that had been hunting Pontius Pilate for 2 years before that morning. Where he stood, what he was afraid of, and the one question he never waited to have answered. 5 men had ruled Judea before Pontius Pilate. None of them had lasted long. He was the 5th Roman prefect, appointed by Tiberius around the year 26 AD. Equestrian rank, minor nobility. His job description was simple on paper and impossible in practice. Keep the peace, collect the taxes, execute the troublemakers. Do not let Jerusalem boil over. Because if Jerusalem boiled over, news of it traveled fast to a paranoid emperor on the island of Capri. For a long time, scholars debated whether Pilate had even existed. The Gospels named him, the Apostles' Creed named him, but for 19 centuries there was no archaeological evidence. Then, in 1961, that argument ended forever. Excavators digging in the ruins of the Roman administrative capital at Caesarea Maritima pulled a fragment of limestone out of the ground. 3 words were carved into it: Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. He was real. The stone is real. You can see it in the Israel Museum today. But here is where the picture splits. The Pilate of Roman history is a brutal man. The Jewish historian Josephus describes him slaughtering protesters in the streets. The philosopher Philo calls him cruel, inflexible, contemptuous of Jewish religion. He marched military standards bearing Tiberius's image into the holy city. He stole money from the temple treasury. When the people rioted, he sent soldiers in disguise into the crowd with hidden clubs to beat them to death. That is one Pilate. But the Pilate of the Gospels is a different man. Hesitant, asking questions, trying to release the prisoner, reading desperate notes from his wife, washing his hands. Both portraits are true, and the reason they look so different comes down to one Latin name most Christians have never heard: Sejanus. By the time Jesus stood in front of him, Sejanus had been dead for 2 years, and Pilate was running out of time. By Passover, the city held over 2.5 million Jewish pilgrims, jammed into a city built for 50,000. What does that mean? It means the streets were rivers of bodies. The hills outside the walls were covered in tents. The smell of lamb's blood ran constantly from the temple. Every Roman soldier on the walls was watching for one spark, one wrong arrest, one careless execution, one riot that could not be contained. Pilate had survived this Passover season before. He believed he could survive it again. He was wrong. They came up the western road just as the first light hit the towers. The 3 towers of Herod's palace, Phasael, Hippicus, Mariamne, rose above the upper city like teeth. Behind them sprawled the palace itself, two enormous wings of white limestone, gardens between them, marble pools, military barracks along the southern flank. This was the Praetorium, the governor's house when he came up from Caesarea for the festivals. Caiaphas walked at the front of the procession. Annas was beside him. Behind them came the temple guards, and bound in the middle was a prisoner who had been on trial since before midnight. There was dried blood at the corner of his mouth. His face was already beginning to swell. But when they reached the gate of the Praetorium, the priests stopped. Caiaphas looked down at his sandals, then at the line where the Jewish stone of the upper market ended and the Gentile pavement of the Roman residence began. He did not cross it. He never had.
If we cross, we are unclean. We cannot eat the lamb tonight.
The lamb was bound 3 steps behind him. He kept his sandals clean. This is the detail John recorded with care. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. The men who had condemned the Lamb of God to die stood outside the gate of a pagan palace, protecting their religious purity, while preparing to deliver the lamb to slaughter. Inside the palace, a runner woke Pilate. He came to the threshold without his official robe. He came in his sleeping tunic, hair flat from the pillow, and his face was the face of a Roman governor who had been pulled out of bed by his Jewish subjects before dawn. He stepped into the doorway. He looked across the courtyard at the priests waiting on the wrong side of the line. They woke me before sunrise. For this, why now? He called out across the cold air.
What accusation do you bring against this man?
This was not a casual question. Roman law required a formal charge before any magistrate could begin the procedure called cognitio extra ordinem, extraordinary jurisdiction. The accuser had to articulate the crime. Pilate could not invent it. The priests answered with insolence.
If he were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you.
Pilate threw the case back at them.
Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law.
And here came the line that closed the trap.
It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death.
That was the moment Pilate understood. They were not asking for an opinion. They were asking for his sword. The Sanhedrin held the right to try a man for blasphemy. They did not hold the right to kill him. Only Pilate held the jus gladii, the right of the sword. And they had brought this case to him at dawn, on the highest holy day of the year, with a crowd already gathering at the lower gate, knowing he could not afford a riot. He looked at the prisoner. He turned. He walked back through the bronze doors of his own palace. The doors closed behind him. The crowd was shut outside. And the trial of the century moved into a hall the priests refused to enter. I want you to come with me to a different place for a moment, to Jerusalem in 1999. Beneath an abandoned Ottoman prison called the Kishle, just inside the modern Tower of David, an Israeli archaeologist named Amit Re'em was on his hands and knees in the dirt with a brush. Above him, the city moved. Tourists climbed the stairs of the tower above his head. Across the old city, 2,000 pilgrims a day were walking the traditional Via Dolorosa, the Way of Sorrows, beginning at the northeastern corner of the Temple Mount, at the site of the old Antonia fortress, weeping at the stones beneath the convent of the Sisters of Zion that tradition called the Lithostrotos, the pavement where Pilate condemned Jesus. Re'em's brush moved across a foundation block. then another, then a wall. And the wall was Herodian. Have you ever been so certain you were on the right path that you never thought to check the map? For 16 centuries, Christian pilgrims had been walking the wrong route. The Antonia fortress was a military observation tower, small, cramped, utilitarian. No Roman governor of any importance would have stayed there during a major festival. The pavement beneath the Sisters of Zion had been carbon dated and stratigraphically dated to Emperor Hadrian, around 130 to 135 AD, when Hadrian rebuilt the city as a Roman colony called Aelia Capitolina. Wrong stones, wrong century. A full 100 years after the crucifixion. The actual praetorium was on the other side of the city, Herod's western palace, near what is today the Jaffa Gate, beneath the Tower of David, beneath the dirt under Rehem's brush. The evidence rests on 3 pillars. Philo of Alexandria, alive at the time of the trial, called Herod's western palace plainly the House of the Governors. Period testimony, contemporary with Pilate himself. Josephus recorded that later procurators of Judea, Gessius Florus most clearly, set up their judgment tribunals before the gates of Herod's palace. Standard Roman practice. Governors took the most opulent royal residence and made it their seat. The same pattern is preserved in Caesarea, where Herod's coastal palace also became the Roman headquarters. And then there was the spade. Rehem's team uncovered foundation walls, drainage systems, inner courtyards, all matching the proportions Josephus had described 2,000 years earlier. The case was closed by stone. The Gospel of John gave us 2 architectural words for the place where Pilate delivered the verdict. The Greek was lithostrotos, a tessellated, formal stone pavement, the kind found only in imperial venues. The Aramaic was Gabbatha. Gabbatha literally means an elevated place, a ridge, a rocky outcrop. Roman cognitio law required the magistrate to deliver his sentence from a raised seat, the bema, physically elevated above the crowd, so that the verdict carried the visible authority of empire. At Herod's western palace gates, beneath the Kishle, Rehem's team found exactly that. A flagstone court built around a natural rocky outcrop. The pavement and the ridge. Lithostrotos and Gabbatha, both together, where John said they were. And the Via Dolorosa, properly mapped, did not begin at the temple. It began on the western edge of the city. It ran through the upper market. It ended just outside the old wall, at Golgotha. The route Jesus actually walked was shorter than tradition tells you, and the whole upper city watched him pass. Pilate looked at the prisoner standing in his audience hall, and for a long moment, he said nothing. The hall was quiet in a way the courtyard outside was not. The marble was cold under his bare feet. The torches were guttering low because the morning light was coming through the high windows now. There were no priests in here, no crowd, no accusers. Only a Roman governor in his sleeping tunic and a Galilean teacher with his wrists bound, blood dried in his beard, standing in front of him. Pilate began the interrogation Roman law required. He began with the only charge that mattered to Rome.
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus answered with a question.
Are you saying this on your own? Or did others tell you this about me?
Pilate's reply was the reply of every Roman who had ever served in Judea.
Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done?
And then Jesus spoke a sentence no Roman governor had ever heard in a courtroom. My kingdom is not of this world.
If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting. but my kingdom is not from the world.
Pilate, the political animal, latched onto the word he understood.
So you are a king. You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth.
Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Pilate's reply has echoed for 2,000 years.
What is truth?
He did not wait for the answer. He turned. He walked out. The Greek text gives us the smallest detail and the heaviest one. He just left. That walk is the answer. He stood 3 feet from the only honest answer to his question that has ever been given by a human being, and he walked out the door. He emerged into the courtyard and announced to the crowd,
"I find no guilt in him."
And here is where most retellings of this morning get Pilate wrong. We picture him as a monster, a coward, a weak Roman careerist who could not say no to a mob. But that is not what was happening in that hall. 2 years before this morning, on the 18th of October in the year 31 AD, a man named Lucius Aelius Sejanus had been executed in Rome. Sejanus had been Tiberius's right hand. Sejanus had run the empire while the emperor hid on Capri. Sejanus had been Pilate's patron, the reason Pilate had this job in the first place. When Sejanus fell, Tiberius did not just kill him. He purged everyone connected to him: senators, generals, provincial governors. For the next 2 years, an empire-wide witch hunt swept up every man who had been appointed under Sejanus's influence. Pilate was that man. He was not a monster that morning. He was a terrified bureaucrat who could feel a noose tightening around his own neck. And that is worse than a monster. Because a monster you can blame. A frightened man making the wrong choice to save himself? That is a man we recognize.
I cannot afford another delegation to Tiberius. Not now. Not after Sejanus.
The chief priests sensed the hesitation. They pressed harder. They added the geographic detail that was their first mistake, and Pilate's brief escape.
He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place.
Galilee. Pilate seized it. Galilee was outside his jurisdiction. Galilee belonged to Herod Antipas, son of Herod the Great, and Herod Antipas was in Jerusalem for Passover. The trap had a back door. For 1 hour, Jesus stood in another palace before another ruler. Herod had wanted to see him for years. He had heard the stories, the healings, the crowds. He had executed John the Baptist in a moment of drunken weakness, and the rumor had reached him afterward that this Galilean might be John risen from the dead. He was haunted by it. Now, the prisoner was in his audience hall. He asked questions, many questions. He pressed for a sign, a wonder, a flicker of the supernatural to entertain his court. Jesus answered nothing, not one word. The silence in that room must have been louder than any miracle Herod had hoped for. The tetrarch's mood turned. He ordered his soldiers to throw a splendid robe over Jesus' shoulders, a parody of royal attire, and paraded him back through the streets to Pilate's palace, defeated and humiliated, but legally untouched. Herod refused to issue a verdict. Luke noted the political consequence with cold precision. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this,
They had been at enmity with each other. Two power players had bonded over the shared mockery of a helpless man. That is how political alliances form. They form over the bodies of the powerless. The escape route was closed.
While Jesus was at Herod's palace, in the upper wing of Herod's western palace, a Roman matron sat up in her marble bedroom with sweat on her forehead and the dream still behind her eyes. She had seen a hill. She had seen a darkness over the city at noon. She had heard a sound she could not describe and would never forget. And she had seen her husband's name being cursed by every people on earth for 1,000 years.
That man, the Galilean, the one they brought before dawn.
She did not know who he was. She knew what her dream had told her. She called for papyrus. She wrote one sentence and gave it to a slave. "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." The slave ran. Back at the western gate, the courtyard was full now. The sun had cleared the eastern wall. The chant had a rhythm. It had become something more than a demand. It had become a hammer. Pilate climbed the steps of the platform. He sat down on the bench. He saw the slave coming through the colonnade with the folded note. He took it. He read it. He folded it. He kept it in his hand. He tried his third escape. There was a custom in Judea, practiced by Romans and Jewish rulers alike during the Passover festival, of releasing one prisoner to the people. The Mishnah confirmed it. Josephus confirmed it. It was a political pressure valve, a small mercy timed to the festival of liberation. Pilate offered the choice.
Whom do you want me to release for you? Barabbas or Jesus, called Christ?
In a stone cell beneath the southern barracks, a man was sitting with his back against the wall. He had been there for weeks. The smell of the cell was urine and old fear. The taste in his mouth was the bread he had been given 2 days ago. He could hear the crowd from above, faintly, but he could not make out the words. He had been counting his last hours for so long that the counting had stopped meaning anything. His name was Barabbas, son of the Father. He was an insurrectionist, a killer. The Gospels are specific. He had committed murder during a violent uprising in the city. He was the actual Roman charge: sedition, rebellion, anti-Caesar violence. Sitting in chains, waiting for the cross. Footsteps came down the stone stairs. A guard at the door.
Get up!
Barabbas did not move.
They're calling for you.
Barabbas raised his head. Who? The guard looked at him for a long second.
All of them.
Somewhere above him, in that crowd, his mother was screaming his name with everything she had. She did not know who Jesus of Nazareth was. She knew only that her son was about to walk free. There is no clean side in this story. The crowd, agitated by the priests, made the choice that history will never stop circling. They chose to release the actual insurrectionist and condemn the innocent man on the charge of insurrection. The guilty man walked free under the sentence of the innocent man. It is the gospel in miniature, played out in a Roman courtyard at dawn before the gospel had even been preached. Sometimes the loudest verdicts in our lives are the ones we never actually say out loud. We just stand there and let the crowd choose for us. Pilate looked at the note in his hand. He looked at the prisoner. He looked at the crowd. He gave the order to scourge. The lictor was a professional. He had done this hundreds of times. He counted strokes the way a baker counts loaves. He knew the arithmetic of the human body, how many strokes to weaken without killing, where to land them, how to pace them so the prisoner remained conscious for the cross. The flagrum in his hand was a multi-thonged whip with pieces of sheep bone and small balls of lead tied into the leather straps. It was an instrument of trade. The cold stone of the inner courtyard pressed against Jesus' knees. The smell of the leather strap was the smell of the men who had been beaten with it before him. A sour, soaked-in record of 100 prisoners. The metallic taste was already in his mouth. Iron, salt. The Mediterranean light angled through the columns. The first stroke cracked. The lictor counted. On stroke 23, he glanced at the prisoner's face. For the first time in his career, he looked away. When it was finished, the soldiers of the cohort gathered the prisoner into the barracks. 200 to 600 men. The smell of male bodies in armor, leather, old sweat. The clatter of dice in a wooden cup. And here is where archaeology hands us something Christian tradition has almost never told you. On the flagstones of Roman barracks across the empire, in Jerusalem, in Rome itself, in colonial outposts from Spain to Syria, archaeologists have repeatedly found the same etching scratched into the heavy stone. A circle with 8 spokes radiating from the center. The letter B. A symbol of a scorpion. A semicircular arc cut by a triangular shape that looks like a dagger. The game was called Basileus, the Greek word for king. The B identified the game. The crown circle was the king's throne. The scorpion was the badge of the Praetorian cohort. The dagger across the arc represented the lifeline being cut. Soldiers played it for hours during the long boredom of guard duty, casting dice carved from sheep knuckle bones, moving small tokens around the circle. And when a condemned prisoner was available, the game took an interactive turn. The prisoner was forced into the center of the board. He was made to play the role of the king. Each roll of the dice dictated a new humiliation. A robe, a crown, a scepter, a blow, a spit, a mocking bow. The cohort cheered each roll. The game continued until a token reached the lifeline cut by the dagger, meaning the king's reign was over. A young soldier in the back of the room was holding the dice cup. He shook it once, twice. He did not roll. Roll. He's already bleeding. Roll! Roll! The dice came out across the stone. While the dice were rolling in the barracks, half a mile away in the temple court, a priest was holding a Passover lamb. He was checking it for blemishes, running his hands along its flank. Its fleece was white. Its eyes were calm. The priest had done this thousands of times. He reached for the cord to bind it. Robe placed on the prisoner. Lamb washed. Crown of thorns twisted onto his head. Lamb's head examined. Reed scepter pressed into his hand. The priest reached for the knife. The dice were thrown for the last time. The lifeline was cut. The priest raised the knife. They brought him out one last time. The morning had moved. The sun was high now, hot on the limestone of the upper city. Pilate climbed the rocky outcrop, Gabbatha, and took his seat on the bema. The wood of the chair was warm from the sun. The pavement of Lithostrotos spread out below him. The crowd pressed against a cordon of soldiers. The chant had a rhythm now. Pilate raised one hand for silence and gestured to the prisoner beside him. Ecce homo. 2 Latin words. Behold the man. In Roman speech, homo meant merely a man, nothing more. Pilate was making a final, desperate visual appeal.
Look at him. He is no king. He is no threat. He is nobody.
But Pilate did not know what he had just said. In the language of the Gospel of John, written in a mind soaked in the Hebrew Scriptures, the man was the title of the Son of Man in the 7th chapter of Daniel, the eternal figure who comes on the clouds to receive an everlasting kingdom from the Ancient of Days. Pilate, trying to deny Jesus' kingship, had just inadvertently announced it. He thought he was saying just a man. He was identifying the man. The crowd answered with the chant they had been building for an hour. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" A Roman officer leaned in toward the bench. His voice was low.
Prefect, the crowd is moving. We need a decision.
And then, finally, the priests played the card they had been holding all morning.
If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar.
There is a kind of fear that does not shout. It just whispers. And the whisper is enough. Pilate's hand on the arm of the bema went white at the knuckles. Caesar's friend. Amicus Caesaris. An official Roman title. And the threat behind it was an accusation of crimen lese majestatis, treason against the emperor. In the post-Sejanus world, with Tiberius purging anyone connected to the dead patron, an accusation of treason from a hostile foreign delegation was a death sentence. Not for Jesus, for Pilate. In some farmhouse north of Jerusalem, in a village called Nazareth, a woman who had carried this prisoner in her body 33 years earlier was waking up to a normal Passover morning. By nightfall, she would be standing beneath a cross, with his blood running down to where her sandals stood in the dust. She did not know. Not yet. The news traveled slower than the verdict. Pilate turned to the slave at his side.
Bring me water, a basin, now.
The slave ran. The basin came, bronze with handles. The water was well cold, river cold. Pilate noticed the temperature. The slave poured. Pilate dipped his hands. The water sounded against the bronze. The crowd went quieter. Not silent, but quieter. The way a crowd goes when they realize a man has stopped arguing and started performing. The water dripped from his fingers back into the basin in slow drops. His wife's note was still in his other hand. The corner of the papyrus was getting wet. A child somewhere in the crowd, who did not understand why everyone was so quiet, said something. A woman shushed it. A Pharisee turned away. Pilate spoke loud enough for the priests to hear.
I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
This was not Roman procedure. Romans did not wash their hands to declare innocence. The ritual came from the 21st chapter of Deuteronomy, where Jewish elders washed their hands over an unsolved murder to declare they had no part in the bloodshed. It was a Jewish ritual. And Pilate, sitting on the bema on the rocky pavement in front of the chief priests of Israel, performed it deliberately, in public, with cold sarcasm, to throw their own Torah back in their faces. The crowd shouted back the most terrible answer ever shouted in human history. "His blood be on us and on our children!" Pilate stood up on the platform. Cognitio law required the formula. The verdict had to be spoken aloud, in Latin, to the lictors, so that it carried the weight of empire and could not be appealed. Pilate looked at the prisoner. He looked at the basin of water already going still. He looked at the note from his wife, the corner now soaked through. Inside the prisoner's mind, in the silence beneath the chant, one word formed: Father. Pilate spoke 3 words.
Ibis ad crucem.
You will go to the cross.
I asked him what truth was. I never waited for the answer.
The soldiers led Jesus away. They stripped him of the robe from the game. They dressed him in his own clothes. They brought him the patibulum, the heavy crossbeam he would carry on his shredded back through the upper city to a hill called the Place of the Skull. Pilate sat alone on the bench. The basin sat beside him. The note sat in his hand. And the Lamb walked toward the altar.
2,000 years later, the basin Pilate used is dust. The flagstones of Gabbatha are still there, beneath the Tower of David, in the courtyard's Amit Re'em uncovered with a brush. Tourists walk over them every day without knowing what happened on them. The Pilate stone in Caesarea still bears his name. But Pilate's name is remembered for one reason and one reason only. Every Sunday, in churches in every country on earth, billions of Christians say 4 words from the Apostles' Creed. Suffered under Pontius Pilate. The man who tried to wash his hands of the verdict is the one man in human history whose name is permanently chained to it. He spent the morning trying to escape responsibility. He has spent eternity bearing it. There is a Greek word that runs through the Passion accounts like a thread you cannot pull out. Pareidoken. It means handed over. Judas handed him over. The chief priests handed him over. Pilate handed him over. Each one thought he was making a decision. Each one thought he was the agent of the moment. But 700 years before any of them was born, the prophet Isaiah had already written the verdict that mattered. He was handed over for our transgressions. The men who thought they were sentencing Jesus were instruments, even Pilate, especially Pilate. Some basins of water can never wash a hand clean. Some choices stay with us long after the crowd has gone home. We have all stood in Pilate's place. We have all asked the question he asked. The only difference between him and the rest of us is whether we wait for the answer. What would you have done if you had been standing on Gabbatha that morning? With a frightened wife sending you notes, with a paranoid emperor across the sea, with a crowd chanting for blood, with a man in front of you who would not defend himself. If this story moved you, like it. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Share it with someone who needs to hear that the trial of Jesus was not a mob's victory, but a man's surrender, and that the choice that broke Pilate is the same choice we are still being asked to make. In the comments, tell me what hit you hardest. The wrong pavement? The fear of Sejanus? The board game in the barracks? The note from Pilate's wife? Or the 3 words in Latin that he could not take back? Late that morning, after the crowd had gone, after the prisoner had been led away, after the priests had returned to the temple, the bench on the rocky pavement was empty. The basin was still there. The water was still in it, catching the noon sun. The question Pilate asked still hanging in the air above it. What is truth?